right.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you, Lois.
And you'll just standing
I
here.
kept lassoing you there.
I'll get it right after a while.
No, you're doing great.
Okay. This week's Torah portion lays out in chapter 6 the duties of the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the sons of Merari in the tent of meeting. The Gershonites were to bear the curtains, the coverings and hangings in the tabernacle. The Kohathites were responsible for the boards and the bars and the pillars, essentially the frames and the supports. And the sons of Merari were responsible for transporting the objects on their shoulders using the poles constructed for that purpose. Chapter 5 explains how to deal with leprosy, restitution of sin incidentally, that was at a 20% restoration fee. If you sold money for somebody, you had to add 20% to it, so that was an incentive to keep your plate clean. And instructions on dealing with infidelity. Chapter 6 deals with the law of the Nazirite vow, and the chapter ends with the priestly blessing, which is said every Shabbat. Chapter 7 sees the completion of the tabernacle, allocating the wagons needed to transport the structure. Scripture goes into great deal about who offered dishes, pans, animals, basins, and other objects. So I think God takes notice of when, whoever, whatever that they had, if they donated, kind of like a checklist. The Hebrew word we read as Nazirite is Nazer, and it's derived from Nezer, meaning to separate. This term is applied to Joseph. He's being separated from his brothers. When his brothers sold Joseph into slavery, they had no idea that God's hand was in their plan. God, all they wanted was, we want to get rid of this guy. He is a pain in the neck. We just want to get rid of him. Joseph had to wait about 20 years to realize the full impact and scope of the reason behind his being in Egypt. When he revealed himself to his brothers in Genesis 45, 5, 6, and 7, he told them, come here. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. And they probably were like, we're done. We're toast. And it kind of probably swallowing hard and just like, what am I going to do? Now therefore do not be grieved nor angry with yourselves that you sold me hither. For Elohim did send me before you to preserve life. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve your posterity in the earth and save your lives by a great deliverance. In Genesis 49, 26, Jacob is speaking to the blessing of each of his children. And he says of Joseph, the blessing of thy fathers have prevailed above the blessing of thy progenitors' ancestors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head that was separate. That's where that comes in, from his brothers. The Nazirite vow, according to the Mishnah, was most often temporary with a minimum of 30 days duration. While the temple is no longer with us, the idea of separating ourselves to God for a season is timeless. When we make an effort to reach out to God and back it up with fasting, self-denial, and prayer, I believe God takes notice. James 4:8 says, come close to God, and he will come close to you. Clean your hands, sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded people. The Torah portion goes into great detail about the steps needed to be taken to perform the Nazirite vow and setting out in precise order the duties the various groups assigned to the tent of meeting. Each group has a specific task to complete, and if they all did their assigned tasks, everything would go smooth like a well-oiled machine. Getting close to God requires work on our part to get rid of the things that keep us busy and away from spending time with Him. How much time do we spend on Facebook, checking news feeds, watching television, surfing the net, or on our pet projects? How much better our lives would be if we took just a few minutes away from those things that so easily waste our time. Hebrews 12:1 and 2 suggests this. So then, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us too put aside every impediment, that the sin which easily hampers our forward movement, and keep running with endurance in this contest set before us, looking away to the initiator and completer of that trust in Yeshua, who, in exchange for obtaining the joy set before him, endured execution on a stake as a criminal, scorning the shame, and has sat down at the right hand at the throne of God. Order in our lives is just as important, and setting priorities is a great place to start. To enter the secret place, as the gospel calls it, should be the goal of every believer. In the case of Samson, who was a Nazarite from birth, his lot was determined before he was born. An angel of the Lord came and told Manoah's wife that she would have a son, and he was to be a Nazarite his entire life. Wanting to be obedient to the Lord, they requested another meeting in order to get clarification as how to raise a child and what should be done for him. Later in the same chapter, she asked the angel to appear again for her greater clarification on raising Samson. When he appeared, she ran back and got her husband, who asked if he was the one who had previously spoken to his wife. His answer was, "I am." When I looked at the Hebrew, and it's not Yahovah, it's Ani, which just means I. When Manoah asked the angel what his name was, he said, "It is wonderful, Pele." In Isaiah 9:6, one of the names given to Messiah is Pele, wonderful. These references lead me to speculate that this was a pre-incarnate appearance of Messiah. And God had great plans for Samson. Again, on the Brit Hadashah, we see an angel appearing to Zechariah to announce the birth of Yochanan the Immerser, cousin of Yeshua. In both cases, God had great plans for these individuals before they drew their first breath. In these three instances, each was given an opportunity to have a close walk with God. Joseph, although a youth, when he was sold into slavery, had learned his lessons well and remembered that God was first and foremost in his life. He kept the faith, and God saw him through. Perhaps Samson was resentful of the fact that he was different. No parties with drinking, carousing, or getting into trouble. Instead, he had to go his own path. Early in his life, Scripture says the Spirit of the Lord began to move on him at times in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. He took a wife from among the Philistines, which proved to be of the Lord, resulting in him wreaking havoc on them on several occasions. His downfall was giving in to Delilah. It says that after his hair had been cut, though he thought things would be the same as before, he did know the Spirit of the Lord had departed. The vow had been broken. But God was merciful, and he heard Samson's prayer for revenge for his two eyes. Samson killed more Philistines in his death than in his life. Yochanan the Immerser was a great preacher, and in Matthew 11:11 it says there was none greater than him. In his later years, being in prison, he asked Yeshua if he was really the Messiah. So he was in prison, and he was having second thoughts like, what's my life been all about? Is this really, really true? And Yeshua's answer was that the blind see, the lame walk, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor. And Yochanan knew the Scriptures well enough to surmise the answer to the question. In each case, the result was dependent on how much effort and faith the individual was willing to put forth. And like my father-in-law always said, you get out of it what you put into it. Getting our act together and putting God first will work out for our best good. The last verse of the Torah portion makes all the difference in the world. Numbers 7:89 says, when Moshe went into the tent of meeting in order to speak with Adonai, he heard the voice speaking to him from above the ark cover on the ark of the testimony, from between the two Kevarim, and he spoke to him. What are we willing to do in order to get to the point where we can daily hear what God says to us?